Hey there nation, welcome to the show. We help you to play miniatures wargaming on a budget. It is I, Commander CheapSkate, and we are back with another edition of the Underhive Wars. This is a series of battle reports that are dedicated to the game of Necromunda, and in this battle report number 9, it is a standoff scenario that is fought between my friends Fresh Prince Bel-Air of the Iron Sights of House Orlock versus my other buddy Overlord Ace of 911 of House Van Saar. So that's right, ladies and gentlemen, these two gangs, the Iron Sights as well as 911, will face against each other for the very first time in our campaign. So it's pretty interesting to see exactly what happens to these guys, to see exactly how they advance forward into the Battle of the Underhive. So with that being said, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to play some background music real quick. If you want to see exactly what each of the gangs are bringing and you want to take a look at their rosters, please feel free to pause and check out your own leisure. So with that being said, ladies and gentlemen, let's get this on. Alright, so with our army list over with, let's go ahead and talk about the scenario rules for this one. This is a standoff scenario, which is basically just a gang fight is what it is between both of these gangs. They'll be fighting it out in the tombs, as you can see right there in the middle of the table. It's been a while since we actually had this underground piece of labyrinth type of terrain to use before, so because I'm pretty excited to see this being used again for battle report. For the scenario rules in this one, gang members get 1+ experience points for each action roll they make upon enemy gang fighters. At the same time, the winning gang leader also earns an additional experience point as well. And also for winning the scenario, the gang also earns D3 times 10 creds added to their stash as well. You also gain +1 reputation point if this is the very first time that your two gangs are fighting against each other. However, if any gang battles out, they also lose 1 point in reputation as well. And that pretty much makes up the scenario rules for this one. Alright, so now that we're done talking about the scenario rules, let's go and talk about deployment real quick. For 911, over on the left hand side, you have two Juvies located here. You have F and G as well as Mega Man, and right behind them is the gang champion Nero. That guy's armed with a last gun. He's also got the fast shot ability, which means he can shoot twice in a turn, so he's pretty deadly. And right here on the right hand side as well, you have my buddy Warlord Ace's gang leader, that's Bustin' in the back. Up front, he's got two of his gangers, that's Tugs and Souljacks. These guys are armed with bolt guns as well. And not to mention, also my friend also has the Overseer ability, which means that he can basically make a guy do twice as many actions per turn as well. So it makes this gang very, very deadly here on the right hand side. And finally, over here on the very far right-hand side of the battlefield of the tombs, you have the last two members of 911. You have Tough Shakes, that guy's armed with a bolt pistol as well as a sword. And he's also partnered with Moloko, which is another ganger armed with a flamer. Kind of like a little two-man assault squad here on the right-hand side. Meanwhile, across the battlefield, this is the deployment for the Iron Sights. Starting on the left-hand side here, you have Rizzo, I believe is the name of the ganger. He's armed with that axe as well as a last pistol. You also have Johnny the Boy, the Juvie, as well as Raza, who's another Juvie as well. And both those guys are making up the left-hand flank of the deployment area. Up on the top here on the left hand side, you have the acting gang leader for this scenario, because the Toe Cutter, which is the usual leader for the Iron Sights, he's out of action right now because he has a grievous injury. So taking his place is the Knight Rider, that champion's armed with a heavy stubber. He's also got 2 members of his gang as well. I believe that's Mudguts, I believe is his name. He's a gang armed with a shotgun. And the other guy, I believe his name is, oh, it's not Starbucks. Let me take a look at my notes real fast. It's Clunk. No, I'm sorry. It is Mudguts. I'm sorry. So it is Mudguts as well as Clunk is who those 2 guys are. Those 2 gangers are armed with last guns as well as shotguns. And that makes up the deployment on the center portion. And finally, you have Starbuck as well as Kundalini, as well as the other gang champion, Bubba Zanetti. That guy's armed with a flamer. And that makes it the little 3-man assault squad here on the far right-hand side of the table. So with deployment over and scenario rules gone over, we go and take a look at the top of turn number 1, and both gangs roll off for initiative to see who goes first. Alright, so the Iron Sights managed to steal the initiative on this one, and the very first thing that my friend decides to do is that Fresh Prince of Bel-Air activates his gang champion, Bubba Zanetti. That's the champion's armed with a flamethrower. Because of that, he's also able to activate another fighter as well, and this time he activates Clunk is his name. He's a ganger who's armed with a shotgun. As you can see, they both take a turn doing double movements towards the center of the tomb, so that way they can start getting within range of both their shotguns as well as their flamers. In response to that movement, my other buddy Warlord Ace decides to activate his gang leader Bust 9 and decides to use his Overseer ability, which gives one of his soldiers the ability to do twice as many actions. He decides to put that ability onto Tugs. As you can see, Tugs is right in the center chamber in the middle of the tombs. He actually has that guy do 2 turns with double movements in order to get to that center area and kind of like lay in wait for any members of the Iron Sights to come up for it as well. At the same time, he also activates his other ganger Souljax, and that guy just also moves up a double turn too, right in the middle of the intersection there. And that way he can kind of block both the Knight Rider as well as Clunk from causing any more harm. Up next, my buddy Fresh Prince Bel-Air then activates his gang champion, the Knight Rider, and because that, he's also able to activate Mudguts as well. So because of that, the 2 members of the gang also spend a double turn moving forward as well, so that way they can kind of occupy that crossroads section, so that they can start intercepting any members of the 911 that might be coming up that way. And that pretty much makes up the action phase on this side. So right after that, my buddy Warlord Ace decides to activate his gang champion Nero, and because he's a champion, he actually activates one additional fighter. In this case, he activates Mega Man as the name of the character as one of his juvies. As you can see, his juvie takes point as well as what's his name, Nero's right behind him. And since these guys just only did like a normal move forward with a normal 6 as well as 5 inches, these guys could also take a turn trying to aim down and bear down some good firepower onto Mudguts as well. So both those guys open up with them with their shots. And like a boss, because Nero has his fast shot ability, he not only does he manage to wound Mudguts, he also manages to put that guy out of action as well. So because that Mudguts will need to roll up on the serious injury table, see exactly what happens to him. And because that guy just kind of went down and right in front of him, the Knight Rider does have to take a cool check to see if he panics. Unfortunately for my friend Fresh Prince Bel-Air, he failed that panic check for his character. So because of that, as you can see here, the Knight Rider is running away because he wants to escape the hell that is pretty much coming his way. So in order to backpedal from his kind of like a stall that's going on in his plans, the first thing that my buddy does is starts moving his individual fighters. As you can see in this photo, he moves up Raza, which is a juvie's armed with a stub gun as well as a knife. Just kind of moves up his normal double movement of 12 inches right there to start intercepting any 911 fighters that come his way. And at the same time, my buddy Warlord Ace also activates his second juvie, and it actually hasn't make him do a double move forward. So you can see their FNG just kind of moves over to the intersection on the right hand side, kind of lending some support to Tugs on the right hand side, at the same time also covering both Mega Man as well as Nero as they make their way up into the tombs. Right after that, Fresh Prince Bel-Air also moves up Giant the Boy, so that way he can give some support to Rizzo as they make their, I'm sorry, not Rizzo, Raza. That way they can give some support to him as they make their little assault onto 911. And on the right hand side, we start seeing him action as well. We have Tough Chicks making a double movement, followed by Rizzo making a double movement past the Knight Rider in order to help support his juvies. And finally with Moloko, who takes up the rear right behind Tough Chicks, armed with his flamer. And that pretty much makes up the action phase on this one. So with the action phase over, we go directly to the end phase. And luckily for our friend Fresh Prince Bel-Air, he's able to rally up the Knight Rider. So because of that, the Knight Rider will be able to do regular actions again during the next turn, during the action phase on that part. So that being said, let's go to an overhead shot of the entire battlefield so that we can get a good sense of what's going on. So here's an overhead shot at the end of turn number 1 of the action phase as well as the end phase. As you can see, the entirety of 911 is now starting to dominate the lower third of the tombs as they're making their way towards the center portion of the battlefield, as well as assaulting both the left and the right hand flanks. They got their forces kind of concentrated pretty well on the left hand side as well as the right hand side, while at the same time my buddy Fresh Prince Bel-Air is trying to just scramble about, have his fighters take up defensive positions and start getting ready to take the assault on the next turn. So that being said, ladies and gentlemen, that's the end of turn number 1. We go directly to the top of turn number 2, and my friends roll off for initiative. And just like that, the Iron Sights do manage to take priority again for turn number 2, and the very first thing that my buddy Fresh Prince Bel-Air decides to do is take the offense. As you can see in this photo, he charges in his Juvie Raza right into the Juvie FNG, which is my buddy Warlord Ace's Juvie. Though both these guys are packing double weapons. I believe the Raza is packing a stub gun and knife, while as FNG is packing 2 stub guns. So it'll be kind of interesting to see what happens when these guys start fighting out in the close combat phase. As you can see in this photo, the FNG had no problem sticking both his barrels of his stub guns directly into Raza's face and just popping him a cap on that part. So it was pretty brutal in that for my buddy French Prince Bel-Air, because right now he's lost 2 members of his gang, so because he will need to take a bottle check at the end of the turn. So that's the combat phase on that side. The next thing that my friend Warlord Ace decides to do is activate his leader again, using his double actions to activate the Overseer ability. Now, every single time he uses this command ability, he himself is unable to take any action, so because of that, he is still outside the tombs in that part. But he does use his Overseer ability onto Tough Shakes, which is a gang within 12 inches of him. And as you can see in this photo, Tough Shake takes it to the Iron Sights. He spends one of his action turns doing a double movement in order to close a distance, and his second set of actions, he then charges directly into the Knight Rider and engages that guy into close combat. So right now, my buddy Fresh Prince Bel-Air might be losing a champion to Tough Shakes, because Tough Shakes get out pretty tough. At the same time, though, he does stand a little bit better of a chance because he's a champion going against a ganger, but as anyone's never learned about playing Necromunda, you never really know exactly what's going to happen until it's done. And just like a boss, as you can see in this photo, Tough Shake does manage to put the 2 wounds he needs in order to take out the Bubba Zanetti and put him out of action. The way he was able to do is because his bolt pistol, which he uses in close combat, was able to secure the blow. Also put the 2 damage on the guy as well. So because of that, the Knight Rider will need to roll up on the serious injury table to see exactly what happens to him as well. And to make matters worse, Tough Shake then does a 3-inch follow-up and starts engaging Clunk into close combat as well. Not to be outdone on the right-hand flank, my buddy then decides to activate the Knight Rider, and Knight Rider then also activates Giant the Boy as well. And as you can see in this photo, Giant the Boy charges directly into FNG, so because of that, those 2 Juvies will be fighting. As you can see in this photo as well, he also moves with the Knight Rider in such a way that he has a clear line of sight with his heavy stepper right towards Mega Man as well as to Nero. So because of that, he'll be able to both get a shot off with his heavy stepper as well as engage in close combat. Close combat between Giant the Boy as well as FNG was pretty lackluster. My 2 friends kind of flubbed their rolls. I think they rolled like 1s and 2s when they need to roll like 5s, because Juvies aren't really good at their close combat, because they're just kind of mediocre troops at this point. So because of that, all these 2 do are just basically snarl at each other for a turn because they really can't hurt one another. However, the Knight Rider does manage to put a hurting onto Mega Man. Not only does he manage to hit as well as wound Mega Man, he also manages to put him out of action. So because of that, Mega Man will need to roll off on the serious injury table after the scenario is over to see exactly what happens to him. And unfortunately for my buddy Warlord Ace, his champion Nero had to take a cool test because he just watched one of his Juvies get shot to pieces right in front of him. Unfortunately for him, he failed his morale check, so because of that, he just kind of dives into that little cavern there on the left-hand side, trying to escape the hail of bullets that are coming down from the Knight Rider on him. So with all the gang champions as well as gang leaders activated, we now go to the individual gang members and the movements they make. As you can see in this photo, the only thing that really happens is that my buddy Warlord Ace decides to double move up Tugs, so that way he's near the intersection to that main tunnel, so that way he can kind of pop around the side and lay down some suppressive fire if he needs to. Fresh Prince Bel-Air also spends like a little bit of movement forward, trying to send up his fighter Rizzo with his last pistol as well as his axe, and just kind of gets him to like an angle for him to kind of take a shot off on him, because from his position he can kind of see half of Tug's body, but unfortunately for him though, he just absolutely missed his shot, so because of that, nothing really happened on that part. Warlord Ace then moves Souljack forward with his double movement, so that way he's right behind FNG, so if anything should go bad between the comp between Giant the Boy and FNG, Souljack will be able to intercept the Juvie and cause some pain of his own. And because my friend was feeling kind of squirrely, my buddy Fresh Prince Bel-Air charges in Starbuck, so that way they have the 2 fighters going against Tough Shakes in the close combat phase, so that way they can get some bonuses in order to hit this guy and hopefully put him down. But unfortunately for Fresh Prince Bel-Air, he absolutely flubs his rolls with Starbucks, so because that Tough Shake responds in kind, and once again that bolt pistol that Tough Shake can use in close combat was what it took in order to put Starbuck down as well. So because that, Starbuck will need to roll off on the series injury table as soon as the battle report is over. So things are not looking very good for the Iron Sights at this point. And just to keep the momentum going on with the assault that 911 is having upon the Iron Sights, you can see here Moloko also makes a double move right behind Tough Shakes, so that we can let them support with this flamer if need be. So with the action phase over, we go directly to the end phase. And the very first thing that my buddy Fresh Prince Bel-Air has to do is take a panic check to see if his guy actually bottles out or not. And unfortunately for my friend, he fails his bottle test, so because that in the next turn, all of his fighters will need to take a cool check to see if they stay on the battlefield or if they flee off the battlefield because they're afraid of all the danger that's kind of coming their way. So things are looking extremely bad for my buddy Fresh Prince Bel-Air. Unfortunately, I did neglect to take a full overhead shot of the entire battlefield to show exactly what things are happening. So because it will be skipping the end of turn 2, and because that will go directly to the top of turn number 3, and we, my friends, will offer initiative to see who will go first. And for the third time in the road, the Ironsides do manage to take priority on this one. Unfortunately, though, when it came to the panic checks to see if these guys will end up rolling and running away from their bottle checks, the very first guy is Rizzo. So because that Rizzo decides he's going to escape the tombs because he doesn't want to die in these underground depths against Van Saar, so because he flees off the battlefield. And because one guy runs, the rest are thinking about running as well. As you can see in this photo, Clunk decides he's not going to stick around to see exactly what happens in the end. So because of that, he fails his cool test and he also leaves the battlefield as well. So this photo is kind of like 2 photos in one that end up happening. During the action phase, my buddy decides to, Fresh Prince Bel-Air decides to take aim with the Knight Rider again and to cut loose with a heavy stubber against, I believe it was Nero on the very bottom, so that way he can try to take him out as well. But unfortunately for him, though, he managed to miss his shots, was unable to wound him, and because of that, he also rolled a 6 to hit. So because he had to take an ammo check and he failed, so because of that, his gun is out of ammo. We then proceed over to the next turn for the 9/11. As you can see, my buddy Warlord Ace takes out Tugs, has him kind of pop out that center target. He's got a good line of sight with his bolt gun, and he decides to cut loose onto the gang champion. And not only is Tugs able to wound as well as hit as well as to wound the Knight Rider, he also managed to put that guy out of action as well. So because of that, my friend Fresh Prince Bel-Air will need to roll off on the series injury table to see exactly what happens to him. From there, things only end up getting more worse for my friend Fresh Prince Bel-Air. The first thing that ends up happening is FNG managed to put the 2 wounds he needs onto Johnny the Boy in order to beat him in close combat and put that guy out of action. So because of that, Johnny the Boy will need to roll up on the serious injury table to see what happens to him. And because Tough Chicks has been performing like a boss, he did everything he needed to do in order to take out that last remaining member of the Orlocks off the table as well, also causing injury for that guy. So because of that, he also will need to roll up on the serious injury table to see what happens to him as well. And as you can see, ladies and gentlemen, that takes us directly to the end of the game because whatever members of the Ironsides were left on the table that were not put down or out of action, they just ran away because things just went horrifically bad for the gang at this point. So because of that, my buddy Warlord Ace does what happens to win this scenario. So with that being said, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to go directly to the post game and talk about exactly what happened to both gangs. Alright, so now it's time for the post-game. We're going to talk about the fates for each of the gangs. First off, starting with the Ironsides, they actually had numerous injuries within this gang were sustained from this scenario. So we have the Knight Rider, Bubba Zanetti, Starbuck, Clunk, Kundalini, Johnny the Boy, as well as Raza. For the Knight Rider, he suffered an enfeebling injury, so because of that he has -1 to his toughness, while Bubba Zanetti and Starbuck and Clunk all suffered grievous injuries, so they will be able to make full recoveries, but they'll miss on the next battle report because of that. Kundalini suffered a spinal injury where it causes him to lose -1 point to his strength, whereas Johnny the Boy, he actually rolled lessons learned because they got 3 additional experience points, so he's a little bit tougher. At the same time, Raza rolled out cold, so because of that, he'll be back again. For advancements, my buddy decided to take Johnny the Boy and actually spend his experience points to learn the true grit skill for that guy, so because of that, he'll be able to roll 2 dice on the injury table to see exactly which one he wants, and from there they go directly to the turf. So with the turf, they managed to earn 10 credits from their turf because they have 1 hex of territory. They also managed to get 60 credits from working the turf for a grand total of 70 creds. They decided to use that as well as the creds they had inside their stash to make a grand total pool of 100 creds, in which case they bought a plasma gun for Rizzo to use for the gang in the next battle report. Unfortunately for these guys are still stuck at 0 reputation because whatever reputation they gained from fighting against the 9/11 for the first time, they lost because they battled out. So the new record now is at 0 wins and at 3 losses, and their new gang ranking is at 1,235 points. And finally, for the winners, we have 9/11. For the injuries, the only injury they had was FNG, their juvie. He did suffer a grievous injury, so because of that, he will be out on their next battle report. For advances, however, Tough Shakes leveled up all the way to level 2, so because they got +1 to his weapon skill, so now Tough Shakes an even deadlier close combat fighter. From the turf, they managed to earn 20 creds from their turf. The fighters generated 130 creds from their work, giving them a grand total of 150 creds. At the merchant, they purchased a chain sword for Tough Shakes to make it a little bit more deadlier in close combat. They also purchased a plasma gun for Nero, frag grenades for tugs, and they took the remaining 20 crits and put it in the stash. This gang also gained +1 to the reputation for fighting against the Ironsides for the first time, so that puts up their reputation up to 2 points, and their new record now is at 2 wins and 1 loss, and their new gang rating now is at 1,315 points. So that's going to do it for this one, ladies and gentlemen. As always, please feel free to like, comment, and or subscribe. Your guys' input is invaluable as always. Also check us out on Google+, Instagram, Facebook, as well as Blogger for all the latest and greatest what we're doing for a hobby. That's going to do it for this one, you guys. We will catch you guys in the next one. Stay classy.